Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Anxiety Chats. Today, we are joined by Rebecca. She has suffered with anxiety and agoraphobia for over 25 years and shared her experience on social media, which I found recently, and I've just been obsessed with everything you've been posting.
Thank you.
I feel like a different take seeing somebody that really gets it and is currently also going through the same symptoms, because I think there's a lot of people online who share stuff about agoraphobia and it's amazing, but maybe they're completely recovered. So sometimes it's hard to, maybe they've forgotten some of the aspects of it.
That's right. Yeah. And I kind of like made it my mission, I think, this year to try to really document what I'm going through. Because before you do it so quietly and it's almost like a secret, like you're ashamed of it. But I thought, well, this year I'm really going to involve social media in what I'm actually doing. And that can be hard sometimes. There've actually been the odd video where I've actually broken down almost because it's so difficult, the whole journey. But I still thought it was important to share all the good, bad and the ugly with this whole journey.
100%. And the way you speak to your anxiety, I think, is the thing that's taught me the most is like, you're not like, oh my God, here it comes. Oh God, here it comes. I don't know if I can handle this, which I imagine there's a part of you that's definitely feeling that.
Yeah.
But you're like, the way you're talking to the camera and you're saying like, okay, these are the symptoms coming up and I'm going to try my best to stay here. And it's like, this is what we should be teaching people that have panic attacks.
Yeah, definitely. And it's taken many, many years really to learn this. I mean, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? Really, just to stay with it and surrender and accept it. But it's so much harder to actually try and do. I mean, it's taken a lot just to get to where I am right now, to really commit to recovery. I was kind of like hiding quite a lot before, or I was definitely resisting it, definitely fighting against the symptoms. And then I made the decision that this was going to be the time that I'm going to have to go with it. Really kind of like be with the symptoms, and that is hard because as you say on the videos, sometimes I am thinking here it comes internally, I'm thinking, and then I'll think no, this is what I've done before, so now what I'm going to do is going to say, right, okay, I can feel you're here, I'm going to let you be here with me on my journey. And I slow down. That's one of the things I have learned, is to slow right down, which which makes a difference somehow. It does, and you do feel the symptoms subside a little bit, which of course is really a good thing to happen, because we're all human at the end of the day, aren't we? We all don't want to feel this. We can't pretend that we're not trying to get rid of it, because really our ultimate aim is always going to be to get rid of anxiety, but it's trying to be with it, like to have a different relationship with it than what I've had before. Oh yeah.
I've been doing the exact same recently. It like that every single part of your body is saying run as fast as you can, run home, and then everything will be okay. So it's like, it takes so much bravery and courage to be like, I'm actually going to go the complete opposite. And even if I decide I'm going home now, walking to your car slowly and turning the ignition on slowly and being like, we're not in a rush.
Yeah.
There's no time frame, there's no time limit. And it does bizarrely help.
It does. I mean, I have actually been up the road from where I live, and I've suddenly felt that fear, that sweep of panic that you get. And I'm thinking, right, quick, right. I did turn around and even begin to run. Then I thought to myself, well, if I'm capable of running, then obviously there isn't anything actually wrong with me, really. I'm not going to suddenly collapse in a heap on the floor because I'm actually able to run. So therefore, I must be able to walk, and therefore I must be able to walk slowly. And so that's what I actually did. And then when you start to realize that you can change that relationship with your anxiety, I think that's when you start to see some progress, even if it is small. It is good to have something, because it gives you are actually giving yourself hope by doing something, and it's making it a little bit of a difference. Yeah,
totally. And you've been suffering with anxiety and agoraphobia for Is it over 25 years?
It's a very long, yes, it is over. I mean, I've probably had anxiety for over 30 years.
Right.
I keep forgetting what my age is, or I keep deliberately forgetting what my age is. It's been a long, long time. It's been a long journey of ups and downs. It's never been linear for me. And I've also got complex trauma as well. So it's a difficult journey because with trauma, they suggest that you are safe. You develop safety. But with doing exposure therapy, as you know, it's like not being safe, really, but realizing that you are safe when you don't feel safe. You know what I mean? That lovely contradiction that we love so much.
Yeah.
So I've had to kind of grapple with that. But in the end, I did made the actual decision that, okay, I know I've got trauma, but I definitely have agoraphobia. And I definitely have the same fears as most people with agoraphobia. So I am going to tackle that in the best way that I can by going out there and doing what I can. I keep changing it. I keep changing the exposures that I do. I think, right, I'll walk to here because we know it's not the distance, it's how we feel. And I'll stand here for 2 minutes. I'll tell you what, 2 minutes feels like forever sometimes.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. I'm at the bus stop, so it looks like I'm catching a bus, even though I'm not, obviously. And there's people going by, and yesterday a dog was actually almost weed on my foot. As I'm still, I'm finding all this quite amusing. I'm thinking, well, this is fun. But they don't know that I'm just stood there for 2 minutes and I got my stopwatch there, and I'm just yeah. And then I don't know. I think I do actually speak to myself a little bit. So I'm saying things like, stay with it, stay with it, stay with it, and I stay with it. And then I gradually and slowly walk back. And I'm trying, I've got like a goal where I'm going to go to eventually. But I'm trying to be careful about their expectations because we know we can feel, I don't know, kind of like you feel dismayed if you don't manage it. So I'm careful about that expectation. So I'm just edging my way towards my goal, really, and trying to be gentle with myself at the same time. Yeah.
That's all you really can do, and it's about trying your very, very best not to be frustrated, because sometimes it can be, that I think that's the thing that overrides me sometimes is, day to day I'm kind of like, oh well, I'm doing well, I'm trying my best, and then sometimes a wave of frustration just comes over and you're like, for God's sake,
I know,
like, let me live, man.
Oh yeah. And the reality is that that's what we want, isn't it? We just want to be normal, ordinary, like all the people that we see around us, and they're all doing it, and you're thinking, why can't I be like that? But I think it's quite simply because they're not thinking like we are. It's not even in their heads. All our thoughts are all about, oh God, what's this sensation? Oh, my head feels funny. I can walk outside sometimes and I can actually feel too tall, and I'm not. I'm only 5'2", and I am definitely not too tall. But it's like as if I'm exposed, I feel really vulnerable and exposed and really like, And everybody else is just getting on with their day-to-day life. And I'm there feeling like, I'm exposed. But it's just the way that I'm thinking. And I've just got into that habit of thinking that way. I'm trying to get myself out of the habit of it. And sometimes you can be out there and someone will ring you or text you and you think you're thinking about that. And you realize that your brain has gone outward and not inward. And suddenly you're feeling okay. And that's really good. Don't get me wrong, it's really good, but it can be a bit of a safety behavior as well. So it's like taking somebody with you. So it's like still trying to be with the feelings. It's quite a journey, isn't it?
It's really quite a journey. And like, I think that's what's so inspiring is, you've been on a massive journey. And like the other day, when I saw you, you were actually on holiday, like you're an hour and a half away from home and you'd driven there, and it was like, and I imagine that's taken a million trillion, attempts that didn't go as well, but this one, you did it.
Yeah, and it's an amazing feeling when you do. I mean, when you're actually doing all of the loosening towards it and kind of like a ragdoll feeling towards it and trying not to grip the steering wheel, trying to breathe and having your focus more external than internal. And then when you do it and you start to feel the benefits of it, it's like a feeling of joy. It's just the most amazing feeling in the world, and it makes it all worthwhile. But when we went to
Yeah.
drive home, I had that cold flu thing, like I was telling you, and it was not, I'd lost my voice and everything, and I was feeling pretty horrible. And I drove
Mhm.
an hour and a half. Well, it took longer. I couldn't drive fast, and the weather was really bad. And it was windy as well, and I kept feeling it, and I was like, oh my God. And I tried to drive home like that, and I was much more anxious driving home. But in some ways, I learned more from that. I could see
Yeah.
everything that I was doing wrong. I was really tightening on the steering wheel. I was really rigid in my body. I was like, oh my God, what's that? What's this? What's that? And I learned more coming home than going there. So you
Yeah.
learn through the anxiety, which I think is good, hard, a lot of suffering,
Mhm.
but you learn. So it's all good. Everything's good. Every day's a school day, I think.
For sure. And something I'm really curious about is the what kind of things were offered 25 years ago versus now, or the kind of attitudes from especially healthcare professionals. Like, I mean, even now, I'm sure we've both experienced some nice reactions and maybe some not so nice reactions from especially healthcare professionals. So have you seen a big difference in how people react 25 years ago to now?
Yeah, huge, massive difference. I mean, back when I first started to get agoraphobia, no one had a clue. No, but they had some understanding, but it was really limited. And if I had known back then what I do now, I probably would never have become agoraphobic, because I made a mistake of, feeling unwell when I was out. And then I went home with a panic attack. Some friends took me home. And then I didn't go out. I avoided almost straight away. And hence the cycle started. But, I think back then, I mean, so if you go back to the 90s, which is making me feel really old, there was Claire Weekes, of course, Claire Weekes' books. But, I read them, but I have to admit I was suffering so much, it didn't go in. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I was thinking,
totally.
what did she mean? Just accept it. How do you just accept it? I'm feeling terrible, all of that stuff. And so I struggled with Claire Weekes back then. It took a lot. There was nothing like there is today. I mean, all the different people especially on Instagram and Facebook, all the people that we've got, like The Anxious Truth and Shannon Jackson and all the others that I follow, and their understanding of it and their support of it. What I would have done to have had that back then, I had to just struggle. I really struggled badly, and an awful lot of stigma as well. I mean, I had a baby, and I had really bad postnatal depression and panic disorder that gradually went into agoraphobia, and they had no understanding of it. Basically, no one got it. My partner at the time, he didn't understand, and everybody just abandoned me, basically. And I literally had no support. I had zero support, and I suppose it would be classed as a breakdown that I had after my daughter was born. And it was really, really bad, just no support. I mean, you had the odd psychologist that would say something, and the odd counsellor, and a bit of CBT, but it was all the old-fashioned CBT. You must challenge your thoughts. You must write them down and prove them wrong. And we've changed a lot since then, haven't we? It's more like not so much engaging in those thoughts, not having to challenge them, not having to fix everything all the time. It was all about fixing back in those days. And now it's not. I'm glad about that. Yeah.
It's now the opposite, actually. Like, the opposite of fixing is actually just letting it be there and not fixing, which is actually harder in some ways. But I'm so glad you just mentioned Shannon Jackson and The Anxious Truth there, because they're also my absolute heroes. Yeah. I just love them. There's just what they're saying is it works. Like, it obviously takes time and it takes effort and it takes energy, and sometimes it's really hard. But that's the kind of way I follow too. And it's also really interesting to hear you say about having a baby, because I think that's something I really want. But it's, the support aspect. It's just mad that people think, oh, cute baby, oh my God, this baby, it's so gorgeous, and not thinking, actually, there's a mother. Mother's the most important part of this equation here. Yeah. And I'm really sorry that was your experience.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a very, very difficult time. And luckily, my daughter, I've tried to explain it to her over the years, because she actually suffers from anxiety herself. nowhere near as bad as me, I'm glad to say, but nevertheless she does. But it was such a hard time, and no one, my partner didn't understand, his family didn't understand. They all thought I was crazy, which is stigma, because I wasn't crazy. And the more they thought I was crazy, the more I worried about being crazy. Is what, you know, like we have this whole fear of that as well, that you're going insane, even though you're not, because we know it's a neurosis, as they call it, not psychosis. But nevertheless, when people are saying that to you, oh, you know, she's nuts. That's what I used to get. You know, people used to say I was nuts, but I wasn't. Not at all.
No.
I was just so aware that I could feel everything in my body, and it was more awareness than being nuts, you know? So it was so, and even today, some people don't understand. You say agoraphobia, and they'll say things like, "Oh, are you frightened of enclosed spaces or something?" No,
not at all. In fact, that sounds quite nice sometimes to be in an enclosed space that's dark and like.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind getting under the table right now. Actually, yeah, good plan. Yeah, yeah. So there's still an awful lot of people not quite getting it still today. Yeah. There still needs to be more awareness, but you know, like we know it. Sometimes you do have to go through it, like people like Shannon and Drew, who've been there. So they're going to have the compassion and the understanding to be able to transfer it to us in the community that are on this journey to recovery ourselves. So yeah, I'm so glad that, you know, I found them. Well, I found Shannon more recently, but Drew I've known for a number of years. And what I would have done to have known him back then, but then of course back then he wouldn't have been in the same situation, but you know, I wish I'd have known someone like him back then, you know? It would have been amazing, wouldn't it? What a difference.
Definitely. But I think you're also adding to that voice of like somebody that you are further ahead than, well, it's hard to say because like, you know, I could say you're so much further ahead than me and you'd be like, nah, but it's like, it's obviously subjective, but like, I think you're adding to the voice by saying like, this is me. You literally film your exposures and you're like, this is what I'm doing. And the term ragdoll you use quite a lot. Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, I think I've got that a lot from the Anxious Truth from Drew Laughter. So ragdolling is, if you can imagine I always imagine like a rag doll, and it's always going to have red hair. Typical. That sounds so vague, but you know what I mean? It's like, and you know how they come like go all kind of slumpy and floppy. Floppy is probably quite a good word, really. And they're so like just relaxed and laid back. It's a bit like my dog, Toby. He lies on the sofa sometimes with his legs hanging off the sofa, and he's just like, there I am. and it's a bit like that, really. It's like loosening your whole body, like as much as you possibly can, because you know how much we tense up when we're feeling fearful, and we don't even know that we're doing it. You know, the shoulders go up by our ears, and everything just tenses, doesn't it? Our stomachs tense up, and it's like pretending that you're a rag doll, that you're just like a rag doll flopping down the road, which sounds quite funny, but in some ways it is really what you're trying to do. So I always say I'm ragdolling it. I'm ragdolling it, and that's what it means, really. That's courtesy of Drew. Yeah, definitely.
I love that, and it's I actually, you know, it's one of those things. I'm the same as you. Like when I first read The Power of Now, for example, I was like, "Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous!" Like, yeah, wouldn't life be great if we all lived in the now? But I think coming back to them now, maybe it's because I'm a bit older. Maybe it's because, you know, I'm a bit more able to hear these things. Bits of it kind of slip in, and I can understand parts of it now. Still doesn't mean that I'm can live that way, but it's kind of like, you know, I do understand that kind of stuff more, and it's same with like ragdolling it and stuff like that. I imagine if somebody told me that term, you know, a few years ago, I'd be like, get away, you know.
What?
Yeah. Now it's like, okay, yeah, because, and it's also if somebody had said positive mantras to me a few years ago, I would have been like, leave me alone. But now saying things like, I am safe. Yeah. I am just as capable as everybody else. You know, it's helpful.
It is. It's the same as me just suddenly doing the stay with it. I don't know, but I just suddenly started doing that one. You know, I'd be down the road and I could feel the sensations. I can feel them. And I know that what I would normally do is turn around and probably walk home pretty quickly, or even hold on to the side as, you know, like somebody's gate or something. But I'm like saying, stay with it, stay with it, stay with it. You know, it's like an encouragement to myself. And it does
Yeah.
really help. And yeah, I do. I think we've all got our own like cognitive things that we do. I mean, some people say that you shouldn't do that, but I'm too much of a thinker. I'm a real
Yeah.
deep thinker. So I can't avoid my brain. And I'm not going to avoid my brain either. It's going to be there. It's going to talk to me. So if I'm going to have to engage, then I will try to engage with it as positively as I can. And I will say things like, stay there. Stay with it. You can do it. Yeah, do it. Do it. Come on. Yeah. And then, if anybody was listening to me thinking, what? But I don't care about that anymore, I think, no, whatever. Yeah. You've got to be
Absolutely.
that way. Yeah. So.
And my last question for you is, I was wondering if you had a story of a time you experienced anxiety that you could share with us.
Yeah, well, I think actually the exposures that I'm doing right now, walking down the road where I'm walking, I'm actually walking on the road where I had a really bad panic attack. It was extreme, and it's what put me back probably years, if I'm being honest. Hence the whole journey not being linear. I was doing okay until then. I was taking the dog down the road when he was younger. He's got arthritis now. He can't go very far. But I used to be able to walk down the road with him, take him onto the field. And suddenly I couldn't do any of that anymore because I'd gone down to the shop down the bottom of my road. And I was in the shop, and I remember the thought. The thought was, I know what the thought was. It was, I won't get back home. I'm not going to get back home.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make it. And I started to panic in the shop, and I still had to get home. There was no car outside. I had to walk home. And as I started to walk, I felt my legs getting heavier and heavier. And then the panic just overwhelmed me this time. I'd never really experienced it quite so overwhelming as I did then. And it just took over. And I actually had to stop. I literally had to stop. I wasn't sure whether I was going to... I felt like, I didn't instantly, but I felt like I was going to pass out. I felt like I was going to vomit. I felt like I was going to soil myself all at the same time. And it was horrendous. And I thought, oh my God, and I actually held onto somebody's gate. But nobody, well, I don't know whether anybody noticed, because I wasn't taking any notice of anybody else. But I just stood there for a moment, felt absolutely awful. And then I walked back home and got in my house and had continued with the panic attack until gradually it went, as they always do, as we know. And that put me right back. So I avoided, I did not walk down the road again. That road, the road that I am now walking down and staying down for 2 minutes by the bus stop. So I'm going back on the very road where I had that big panic attack, because I recognize the fact that I've got to do that. That is really important. So yeah, it was I don't know why it was so bad, but I think we're always going to have a story of maybe one big panic attack that's really impacted us. And being able to get back up and get back out there again. It takes a lot of courage and commitment and that kind of determination, because the more you stay inside, the more you're stuck in that whole resistance, avoidance mode. So I thought, I've got to do it. I've got to go right back to where I had the panic attack and go further. So that's basically that one. Yeah.
That is so incredible, because I think the majority of people with panic disorder or agoraphobia have that. Like you said, they have the one or two big boys that really just kind of changed the way you saw yourself and really knocked your confidence and just made you feel like I don't know if I'm capable anymore. And it's really heartbreaking, but also I feel really like, oh, that's really amazing that we all have that. Like a lot of us with agoraphobia and stuff, that really horrible panic attack that you've had, we've had them.
Yeah.
We get it.
Yeah.
It's not crazy. It's your body's actually reacting in a very healthy way to the stimulants and to the thoughts that you're having. And it's funny, I have the exact same thought sometimes of, I'll cycle somewhere and it's really hard and I get there and I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get home?
Yeah.
But then I'm like, the bike that we just came on? Probably get back on that.
I know. It's our minds, isn't it? Our minds have just got it wrong. That's all. They're alerted when they don't need to be. It's like an alarm system that's gone off. That's just misfiring, and we've just not allowed it. It's just happened to us. and we're trying to get it
Yes.
back, trying to get ourselves back to normal, and it is hard. And yeah, a really massive panic attack can really affect your confidence, and it really did it for me. I mean, it basically made me kind of like not want to go anywhere near that road again, or even out, really, because you think I'm better off staying at home rather than go through that. Who wants to go through where you feel like you're going to vomit and faint all at the same time, all of it? But I didn't do any of it, and I did get back home safely, and I was okay in the end. But I think it kind of traumatized me. And if you have trauma as well, which a lot of fear of losing control, then that can have an impact. So I think that's probably what made it a lot harder as well. It complicated it, but it didn't put me off. So it's like being an example of someone with complex PTSD who can still tackle agoraphobia and anxiety despite having trauma. It can be done if you really, not so much if you really want it, but you really want to change your life. I think you just want to have a life, like we were saying, desperate to have a life. So you get to the point where you think, all right, anxiety, do your best. Come on. Yeah. Because you've taken everything else. So you're not going to take it anymore. Too old for this.
Totally.
So, yeah.
And the interesting thing is, so that road that you're talking about, that's nearer to you than it's quite near to you, but the 1.5 hour car journey to the holiday is obviously a lot further. And I think that's when people have misconceptions and don't understand, and they say but you can do that, why can't you do that? And all of these things, it's like people just take things for face value, and they see things black and white, and they don't think there's actually a whole person with loads of different things underneath this.
Exactly. Yeah. Just do anything. Well, an hour and a half. What? How come you could do that? You could do that. How come you could walk there? How come you could It's just the way our minds are working. That's why they can't get inside our brains. Our brains are just getting it a bit wrong. That's all. And we got to work through this to get it back on track again. And, and
totally.
And who knows what the future holds,
And I've never met a person with agoraphobia or anxiety or panic attacks that hasn't been unbelievably determined and motivated. And while there's days when they're not motivated and determined, there's this drive, and the drive is sometimes I'd love to just get a coffee to myself and sit somewhere quiet, or the drive could be I want to go on holiday. The drive is different to everybody, but I think there's that spark in each agoraphobic person that's I so want to do this. I'm going to push past this. I'm going to get there one day. And it's we're so brave.
Yeah, definitely. Bravest people of all, I think. I think we're 100%. We're all Captain Marvel if a female.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Rebecca. This has been so lovely to chat to you and inspiring.
Yeah, it's been lovely to talk to you too. Yeah, it's good to meet you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if anyone is listening and would like to come on the podcast to chat, there's the description link wherever you're listening to this podcast. I would love to chat to you as well. And thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks. Bye.